The United States, Canada, and Tokyo, Japan. This is the Rich Stevens Radio Network.
All right, here's where we are today. How are you? I'm Rich Stevens. The Arctic blast is so cold, they're expecting it today to break over 400 records. Thank God it's nice and warm here in South Florida, huh? Peter King is not going to seek re-election in 2020. A police chief killed one of his officers, is now charged with murder. And a plane slides off a very snowy runway in Chicago. Oh, one more thing. Brace yourself for this one. Popeyes is getting ready to announce another new addition to its menu. As if they don't have enough mishigas with the chicken sandwich. Hope you're doing well on this Tuesday morning. How are you? I'm Rich Stevens, as I said. There's an 8-year-old girl that was killed in a 3-car crash, which was caused by these icy roads. This happened in Kansas because of the record-breaking Arctic blast. And the crash comes as this weather system carrying these freezing temperatures and very strong winds is actually moving from the Rockies to the East Coast. And it's a quick-moving storm. It's supposed to affect over 60 million people. And some people saw temperatures drop yesterday 50 degrees from what it was the day before. And up to a foot or more of snow is expected in some of these areas. Now, the Kansas Highway Patrol said the collision occurred 8 o'clock yesterday morning on Highway 56 in near Overbrook. It was a maroon Dodge Ram pickup truck driving westbound, lost control, crossed the center line, hit a black Ford Edge head on. My God. There was also a third car, a red Oldsmobile Alero, rear-ended the Ford, and the passenger, Carrie Ralston, who was only 8 years old, was killed. Now, Terry Ralston, the driver of the Ford, was injured in the crash, but Cassie was wearing a seatbelt in the collision and was pronounced dead at the hospital 9:15 yesterday morning. Some really sad news. You know, the thing is that I've never understood is when people know the roads are going to be in these epic conditions, in this case very icy, snowy, windy, why even go out of the house? I mean, there's nothing more important than a human life. And it's like the plane that went off the runway yesterday and in Chicago. I'll tell you about that coming up in a few minutes, but it just, the plane should not have been trying to land in zero visibility. And you know, another thing, and this just doesn't make any sense to me. When I lived in Denver, I learned something very interesting about DIA, Denver International Airport. And it's one of the few airports, and it's because it's in the Rocky Mountains. I mean, it's the Mile High City, so it's higher up. Actually, you know, the first time, you know, in a plane when it tells you you can dial in on that little TV screen in front of you, you could watch the flight path as it's going. It's the only place that I know of in the United States where when you land, it says you're at 5,400 feet. If you were to land in Florida or New York or Chicago, it would say 0 because you're on the ground. But because the Mile High City is above sea level by a mile, I always thought that was weird. And no matter how many times that I flew back home when I lived in Denver to Denver, I always had that map up in the screen in front of me just to see that, because it always fascinated me. But anyway, the reason I bring this up is because, as I said, Denver International Airport, which is probably one of the coldest areas in the nation, their runways are heated. So things like that happen in Chicago. Now, there's not to say that there haven't been somewhere in history, I'm guessing, a plane that didn't go off the runway or skid off the runway in Denver. But the runways are so big there, there's really no danger of going, you know, it's kind of like the airport in, I think it's called Narita, if I'm not mistaken, in Tokyo, or it's outside of Tokyo. And what they did there is they were very smart. They built the airport 2 hours away from any living communities or anything like that. There's no businesses. There's nothing. It's just the airport. And I'll never forget when we took this flight. It was 19 hours of flying to Tokyo, and then we had to take a bus 2 hours just to get to the hotel because it's literally in the middle of nowhere. Now, Denver, originally, when I first started working in Denver back in, I think it was 1992, I was there for a little while, and the airport was in a totally different place. I can't remember what the name of that was, but the place where it used to be is now a big, huge shopping center. You can imagine how much land they have there. And the new airport, which is not that new anymore, Denver International, is, when they built it from scratch, they put in these heated runways. Had the Chicago airport, O'Hare, had these heated runways, you wouldn't have problems like this. Although, again, I still say that trying to fly and or drive in zero visibility, you're out of your mind. I don't know why the FAA doesn't get involved and say, look, if there's zero visibility, you have no business flying into that airport and just reroute the plane somewhere else. Luckily, the 41 people on board were not injured, but can you imagine you're watching and you see that the runway is just gone? And you're going out, and they actually, this video that a passenger took on that Chicago flight, which I think came from North Carolina, with the right wing hitting the runway, and that's eventually the way the plane ended up on the right wing like that. That's scary as hell. And luckily, in this case, the runways were full of snow and ice, and there wasn't any kind of friction to make the plane, catch on fire. And remember, the fuel is in the wings. Okay, on a much brighter note, I have to share with you a piece of information that I got from a friend of mine in Hollywood, California. And she told me this last night, and I got so excited. I have to tell you that if you don't have HBO, you want to make sure you get it in January, because this is pretty big. Curb Your Enthusiasm is coming back in January. I mean, this is really exciting news. If you're a fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm, Larry David's show, this is just, I love Curb Your Enthusiasm, and so glad it's coming back in January. I wish it was coming back now, because it's just, it's very exciting news. So remember, you heard it here first on the Rich Stevens Show, that Curb Your Enthusiasm is coming back in January. It hasn't been on in years. I don't even remember when it was last. But I wish I could watch those, just like last night I was watching Seinfeld. 11:30 last night, I got home from the hospital and I'm watching Seinfeld till 12:30. And even though I've seen the episodes, I still love them and I still get a laugh out of them. Curb Your Enthusiasm takes Seinfeld to an entirely different level. Listen, if you've never seen it and you were a Seinfeld fan, you will absolutely love it, because it's cable. They can do and say things that they couldn't do on broadcast TV. That's all I'm going to tell you. I don't want to ruin anything for you, but you should, if you get a chance, go buy the DVDs or just watch it. If you have HBO, just search for On Demand. They might have, I don't know. I assume they have some Curb Your Enthusiasm stuff. If not, they're probably going to put it up because they want to get people excited about it. Speaking of getting excited, I was reading this article this morning in the New York Post, and apparently a guy in New York City found a marijuana joint in his Popeye's chicken sandwich. He was eating the sandwich, and then the joint fell into his lap. He told the Post that he was shocked and disgusted. He ate the spicy one first, and it was fine. And then he was taking his last couple of bites from the second sandwich, and it fell out into his lap. He said, I could have choked on the used joint or gotten sick from ingesting it. It was 100% marijuana. He said he saved the evidence. He's got it in a plastic bag at home. And they were basically saying it happened outside of the restaurant and there's nothing they can do about it. But they can at least admit that they made a mistake, he says. I would like for them to own up to it. I think it's ridiculous, not professional. Now, here's Popeye's response. They say, we have high standards for the quality of our ingredients and the preparation of our food. We take all feedback about our meals seriously and quickly take action to make sure all of our guests have a good experience. I don't know about good experience if somebody finds a joint in one of their sandwiches, but oh my God, is that gross or what? And speaking of Popeyes, I teased you at the beginning of the show here. They're getting ready to come out with another new item on its menu. This time, it's bourbon fudge pie. And they're hoping that it's going to be as successful as their new chicken sandwich, where they set up the whole thing to make it seem like they ran out. You know that was a scam. I've told you that. It was totally an ingenious marketing scam. But it worked. And they're based out of Louisiana, and they said they've released the $2.49 sweet treat in the wake of the astonishingly successful chicken sandwich. So here's what the pie is about. It's crispy, flaky crust. It's topped with a rich bourbon fudge filling, topped with a chocolate whipped cream. The chicken sandwich that preceded it was so popular that it sold out after just 2 weeks. That's the marketing scheme. And some customers even got up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get their hands on it. So get ready for the bourbon fudge pie. Popeyes. Yeah, the things that people fall for today are just truly, I got to scratch my head and say, how can people be so gullible? And there's people that believe this stuff. And that's why it's so scary, when we get to a point where we're talking about elections and people promising things on TV commercials. That guy Tom Steyer is spending a fortune here in Florida on his TV commercials. I think I've seen him like several times an hour. That's how many. And that's big bucks, And here's the thing. You can say whatever you want, but action speaks louder than words. And by the way, speaking of the politics, the attorneys for the Democratic presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard, she's a congresswoman, they've written 2016 party nominee Hillary Clinton demanding a retraction of her comments saying that she is the favorite candidate of Russia. Remember that happened a few weeks ago? The lawyers wrote, "Your statement is defamatory and we demand that you retract it immediately." Gabbard's campaign sent out the letter yesterday, which was weeks after her initial comment caused a big stir, and they prompted furious pushback and fundraising by Tulsi Gabbard. Now, Clinton, in comments back in October, had an interview with Obama campaign guru David Plouffe without using Gabbard's name, and said that she's a favorite of Russia, but her team clarified she said it was Republicans, not the Russians, who are grooming her for a potential third-party run. I got to tell you, anything that Hillary touches literally turns to crap. Now, the lawyer wrote in the letter yesterday, Congressman Gabbard is not being groomed by Russia to be a third-party candidate, nor is she a Russian asset. Rather, she is a patriotic, loyal American, a sitting 4-term United States Congresswoman, and a major in the United States Army National Guard. As such, she is a loyal American who has taken an oath declaring her allegiance to the United States of America, both as a soldier and as a member of Congress. She has been serving for over 16 years in the Army National Guard, having voluntarily deployed twice to war zones in the Middle East. So there, take that, Hillary Clinton. So obviously, Representative Gabbard has some fine attorneys working on this case, and they should. She should be required to take it back and stop trying to stir up the pot. I mean, who is she to stir up the pot? And by the way, Epstein didn't kill himself. Sorry, couldn't resist getting that in there. Remember Megyn Kelly? She was at Fox News, very successful. She was supposedly on the right, and then she got a job at NBC, and all of a sudden was on the left. Shows you what a phony she is or was. Well, she was fired by NBC. So she's tried to make a comeback, and she has failed to get any interest on social media, even though she teased the relaunch of her journalism career a year after she was fired from NBC. I'm guessing that she had some kind of non-compete that wouldn't let her do anything like this. But on Friday, I was reading that she was promoting her exclusive interview with the former ABC producer who was fired from CBS for leaking Amy Robach's hot off-the-mic rant that ABC had killed their Jeffrey Epstein story before any other outlets got it. But the conversation with Ashley Bianco wasn't enough to win her a huge following. The Instagram TV clip had only been viewed 27,000 times by late yesterday, and her YouTube channel only got 7,000 subscribers. Now, her following on Instagram, which has over 1 billion global users, not hers, but, globally, got about 27,000 in 3 days under the @MegynKelly handle, which focuses on current stories and my insight in real time, according to the profile. Another @TheRealMegynKelly had 4,675 followers last night. Now on Twitter, where she has, Megyn Kelly, 2.41 million followers after years on the platform. In her time on all these TV networks, she just posted, quote, "I just joined Instagram. Have a feeling you'll be interested in my first post coming Friday morning. Please follow me @TheRealMegynKelly. Have some news coming your way." So basically, she tried to ramp up interest by posting one verified Instagram channel under her name, launching my Instagram with an exclusive interview of the woman just fired after the leak of the hot mic moment by ABC's @AJ Robach. But did ABC News target the right person? And then she goes on to say, "Follow along with me here @MegynKelly for current stories and my insight in real time." And in a video, she told her followers of newly established account that she would later in the day post an interview with Bianco. Now, the producer leaked a video to the activist group Project Veritas. I told you about this last week, of a visibly frustrated Amy Robach discussing how ABC News had not allowed her to air what was purported to be a real in-depth interview with a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. And Kelly had more luck on YouTube, where the 7 full-minute interview was viewed about 200,000 times by last night. She used the hashtag Jeffrey Epstein to draw in search traffic to her page, but the figures were likely also helped by widespread embedding of the clip in online news outlets, not because it was Megyn Kelly. So people had an interest, but nothing like she expected, or you would expect, considering that she was once, top of her game. But I think she's gone down the rabbit hole and might not be able to come out of it. What do you think? I love finding things that are very... I studied psychology in school. And I love psychology because there's things that you wouldn't think of every day. And when they do research on certain things that are psychological, I'm fascinated by this stuff. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Color has a significant psychological impact on our everyday lives, which could affect your health for better or for worse. Specifically, the color of your medication can actually affect how effective we think it is. And if a hospital consultation room is painted like a warm, neutral color, then patients are more likely to feel at ease. They say it can also affect kids and their ability to learn and be happy. Now, the theory is that while brightly colored toys and decor can be distracting and overstimulating for young brains, gray and beige actually encourage calmness and improve children's conduct, their listening, attention, and creativity. Now, doctors have actually been aware of this impact of color on our health for apparently years. It was back in 1996, there was an analysis in the British Journal of Medicine. They did 12 different studies suggesting that the color of drugs can actually alter their effectiveness in patients. I don't know. I never looked at the color of drugs and said, oh, this one's going to do this or this one's going to do that. Epidemiologists at the University of Amsterdam found that people often associate red, yellow, and orange tablets with the type of stimulant effects found in medications like Ritalin, which is used in ADHD treatments, and narcolepsy drug Adderall too. And meanwhile, patients associate blue and green tablets with tranquilizing effects as produced by medications like SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, antidepressants, as well as those benzodiazepine sedatives. Now, researchers found that when the color matched the drug's expected effects, it worked a lot better in patients. And conversely, when the color of the medication clashed with expectations, they say the drug was not as effective as it had been in trials that used the color-free tablets. And again, I don't know about you, but I've never looked at a pill and say, oh, well, this is a green pill. It's going to do this, And I take way too many pills, but I have to because of all the medical issues I went through. Literally, my morning pills and my nighttime pills are a handful, and they're all different colors. But I never looked at, for example, a green pill and said, oh, I'm going to think, I just never thought of it. I literally just put the pills, and this is kind of funny because when I was a kid, I almost died once because I had some kind of stomach thing going on. And my mom took me to the emergency room and they gave me a pill that was in a capsule form, and I couldn't swallow pills. I, as a kid, probably up to 16 or 17, couldn't even take Tylenol without chewing it. So when they gave me this capsule, I couldn't take it. And they said I almost lost my life because I couldn't take it. They finally emptied it out and put it in, the capsule, the powder, and gave it to me with some water, and I was able to take it. But now I literally take a handful of pills, put them in my hand, put the whole bunch in my mouth at the same time, and I'm actually able to wash it down with water. I've had a couple problems once in a while where it goes down the wrong pipe, then you start choking. It happened to me once when I was in the hospital. I thought the nurse was going to have a conniption, but I just needed some more water and spit up some of the pills, and I was okay. Thanksgiving is less than 2 weeks away. Well, actually, I think it's 16 days now? Why have turkey with a side of mac and cheese at Thanksgiving when you can combine them together? I was reading this on the Reynolds Wrap site this morning. I couldn't believe it. They just released their annual Thanksgiving recipes, and they have an idea this year that to make a mac and cheese turkey. I haven't decided if that sounds good or not yet, but it's not. It's really not a complex recipe. Basically, you crack open a box of mac and cheese, you coat the turkey into powdered cheese, and then serve it over the noodles. But still, you'll definitely get people talking about it if you bake this. And if you're not over pumpkin spice by now, Reynolds also has a recipe for a pumpkin spice turkey. And they also have, of course, they always have their really ridiculous turkey recipes from the past few years up in their site as well. There's a Cool Ranch turkey, there's a Mountain Dew turkey, and there's a Flamin' Hot Cheetos turkey. So if you're into that kind of stuff, you want to check out the Reynolds Wrap website because all that stuff is there. All right, now I got something to tell you about that is very freaky. It's going to make you very uncomfortable. So whatever you're doing, drop it now, unless, of course, you're holding a baby, and pay close attention because this is the first time I'm going to tell you that I think Google is going too far and has gone too far. And this is very scary. I've been told that Google has been working on this top secret project with a leading healthcare company to gather millions of our health data, and we don't know about it. Now, this was first reported yesterday. The Wall Street Journal had a small piece on this. They say the company has teamed up with Ascension, which is the second largest healthcare services company in the nation, for a project that so far is being codenamed Nightingale. And yesterday, when the story came out, the two companies announced a collaboration in a press release where they revealed that Ascension's data will in fact move onto Google's cloud platform. That means Google will now have access to yours and my test results, our diagnoses, and hospitalizations to give them a full digital health history. Now, no doctors, no patients in the 21 states where it's going to be used has even been told about this. There's as many as 150 Google employees have already seen some people's data, and employees at Ascension have voiced concerns over the way it's been harvested, and they say it's 100% legal. Now, how the hell can this be legal? Because to me, this sounds like the HIPAA laws were just pushed aside and it doesn't matter. But again, according to the Wall Street Journal, Google is using the info to inform new design software that it will rely heavily on artificial intelligence, and its purpose supposedly will be able to zero in on individual patients to suggest changes to their health care. And a spokesperson from Google claims that the project is 110% legal. I don't know about you, but that makes me feel very, very uncomfortable. That doesn't sound like something, and again, I go by the HIPAA rules. My mom's in the hospital. I had to sign all these HIPAA forms that they went over all these documents with me, and yet this is being done, and we don't have a say, and we're not even being notified about this? When I lived in Denver, I went to a doctor, an internist, that was part of a group of 5 people. And apparently the rent in the office, there was some kind of story with the rent that they doubled the rent on this huge suite that they had in this beautiful building in Denver. And it was in the Denver Tech Center. And I became friends with my doctor, outside of the office. And one day I got a call from him and he says, there's going to be a story on the news tonight. Don't be alarmed. I said, what's the story about? And he says, well, apparently the doctors in the offices just abandoned the office. I said, okay. And I said, well, so what should I not be alarmed at? He said, well, apparently they left all the file cabinets there because they couldn't get everything out. They had too many patient records. They had thousands of records. And what was happening is the management that owned the building actually got one of those big, what do you call those things? Like a big thing where they dump garbage when a building's moving. And they dumped the file cabinets out into that thing in the street. That night on the 6 o'clock news, I'm watching the news, and it was the lead story because the reporter was picking up these file folders and she didn't, it seems like it was yesterday, she didn't read the names of the people, but she was reading information that you would want to be sitting out in a dumpster outside. And somehow they were able to get away with this, the landlord, because they defunct on their payments for the rent, and they just threw everything out. And the reason my doctor told me not to worry was because he actually took my files, his files, and some other patients' files to protect us because he knew what they were going to do. Can you imagine that? I mean, if that doesn't make you feel uncomfortable, oh my God. If I would have seen that, and of course they said the doctor's names, and he hadn't warned me, I probably would have had a conniption. It's, not something that you would. It's pretty scary. I shouldn't be laughing, but God only knows what things go on that we have no idea about. That's the kind of stuff that you got to worry about more than anything. Hey, listen, thanks for listening to the Rich Stevens Show. I certainly do appreciate it. It's good to have you here. And maybe you'll share the show with somebody else wherever you're watching it or wherever you're listening to it. I do appreciate it. And have a great Tuesday. That's all I got for now. It's time to say bye-bye.
It's the end. It's the end. It's the end.